Hi everybody, I'll be talking in English today. So I'm David Vávra. I used to work as Android developer at Avast till February. Then I started my own company called Step Up Labs. We are working on this app called Settle Up in Czech Dlužníček. And we decided to rewrite this app using all these cool technologies, also new design. And I would like to share some experiences, what we learned using these technologies. We actually have been working with Google even before new Firebase announcement on I/O. So we have been working with the new Firebase since February. So we have quite an experience with it. Also, I would like to try something new for the questions, for the Q&A. So at the top, you can see a link where you can ask questions, and you can also vote on questions. And at the end, I will go through these questions, and I will try to answer them. Okay, so what is Firebase? So in my opinion, it's the biggest thing that was announced on Google I/O this year, the biggest developer offering from Google yet. It used to be this startup Google acquired, which basically did just the real-time database, and like they were really good at it. But now Firebase is so much more than that. It's a suite of many tools which are tightly integrated together, and they are usually integrated through the analytics. So this system is really modular. You can use just some parts of it, but analytics is compulsory. So if you include dependency into any of these tools, analytics will be in your app. So Firebase is a recommended way for building new app by Google. So they recommend using as much as these tools as possible, and it will make your lives better, but also you can use just some parts of it. Firebase is also cross-platform, that's important. So it's not just for Android, it's also for iOS and web, and they also have REST API and a lot of like third-party libraries to different languages. And what's also important that it's not just for developers, but as you can see, it's also for marketing people and like growth hackers is the modern term today. So also non-developers can interact. There is a very nice dashboard, and they can see the analytics, they can send notifications, they can generate these links. I will go into that later. So that's Firebase. And now, how are we using it? So I will not go deep into the various Firebase tools. Like there is really nice Google I/O presentations about that. I really urge you to watch it. I just want to tell you how we are using it from our perspective. So this is design of the new Settle Up. I will just explain what it's about so you can understand the examples. So Settle Up is about sharing expenses. You can, users create various groups, they put expenses into the app, and then the app tells them like who owes how much. That's the idea behind the app. And let's go into the features. So first, it's the real-time database. It's like the oldest product of Firebase. It hasn't changed much since Google acquired it. And it's really battle tested. It worked for many years, and we will actually be switching from our own backend on App Engine to Firebase real-time database. So what does it bring us? It brings us mostly synchronization logic. So it does all synchronization between various devices. That's quite hard to do, especially on like spotty mobile connections. So we had some edge cases in our backend, which is not idle, but we hope that real-time database will fix that. And we have been testing it, that it really works even in bad connections. It also gives us offline. So that's really amazing that like we can remove all this code, like this SQL databases and everything. Real-time database just works offline quite seamlessly. I will later go into more detail. So another feature is dynamic links. Dynamic links, it's quite cool. It's this link, it's just HTTP URL, HTTPS. but it's like cross-platform, so it works on web, iOS, and Android. And cool thing about this is that it survives the app installations. So on Android, if you click on it, it goes to the Play Store. User installs it, opens your app, and you get the link. So you can give the context to the user. So we'll be using that for invitations to groups. So when somebody creates groups like this, he can send this dynamic link to his friends using like WhatsApp or email or whatever, and then people can just join on all platforms. Firebase storage. It's built on Google Storage. It's basically just a blob store, so you can store binary data into this. Because the real-time database should be just for like text-based data, but this is for binary, so we will be storing images of receipts. People can create receipts for the expenses, so we'll be storing that there. Authentication, that's my favorite part of Firebase. It saves you so much pain in development, because usually like your app is not about authentication, it's about something unique. And like every developer has to integrate like Google, Facebook, or Twitter login. Then also some users don't want to sign with anything, they just want email and password, and you have to manage like this forgetting password and sending emails. And Firebase does this all for you. And there's even a UI library which also creates the flow for you. So the flow for authentication can be quite complex. There is a library for that. So it will greatly simplify this. Cloud messaging. So it used to be Google Cloud Messaging. Now it's Firebase Cloud Messaging. It's pretty much the same thing, just different name. It's more integrated into other features, but it's for sending push notifications. So what's important to know about Firebase real-time database is that it's synchronizing with the server only when the user is inside your application. So not on background, only when user opens your activity, then it synchronizes. But we want to synchronize also on background. So we will be sending FCM notifications to trigger the synchronization with real-time database when something changes into the group. Then there is crash reporting. So that's, I think you probably know Crashlytics. So we'll be replacing Crashlytics with crash reporting. I think in this moment, Crashlytics is better, it has more features. But what's really nice with crash reporting, that it's integrated to all this Firebase, so with the analytics and also push notifications. So you can, for example, send push notifications just to your users where the app crashed in the last week. So I think that's really worth it. I was always talking about analytics. It's like the core of the whole Firebase experience. We are currently using Google Analytics. We'll be replacing with Firebase Analytics. And the reason is that it's made for mobile. Like it's mobile first, this Firebase Analytics. Google Analytics is more for the web, and Analytics is more for mobile. So we'll be using that. Firebase hosting, another service for hosting static files. So we are developing a web app. We'll be hosting that on Firebase hosting. What's really nice is that it gives you free SSL certificate. So you don't have to pay for it anymore if you host here. Remote config, that's a really useful feature for many apps, even if like they don't want to use other Firebase features. So remote config, it's like you can remotely configure your app. So typically it's used for A/B testing. You can show like two different kinds of UI and then measure it. But what's really interesting is using it for like feature toggles. So you can release update in Google Play, nothing changes, and then you gradually turn on or off some features. So you can turn off features if they crash, stuff like that. It's really really useful. So we'll be using that. Firebase Test Lab. That's one way to solve the Android fragmentation problem. So they have a lot of physical devices running in the cloud, and you can deploy your app on that, test it. They have about 20 different kinds of devices, I think now. So what's really nice, it gives you free robot test. So like you don't have to write any tests. This is like just automatic test which clicks to random things in your app. So it gives you free robot test every time you upload something to alpha or beta channel in Google Play. And this you have to pay for. If you want to launch espresso tests or take a screenshot, you can do that also. And notifications, that's a tool not for developers, but more for these like growth hackers, marketers. So it's a console. It's like visual think in the Firebase console, and you can play with the analytics, create audiences, target notifications to like really specific group of people who did something in your app. And it's built on the GCM. Like this is the technical stuff, and this is the UI for it. And finally, app indexing. It's been in like Google Play services for a long time. It used to be just for apps with public content, like eShop or news magazine or something, so they can index this public content into Google search. Now, you can also index like private content, which is just local on one phone. So like all of our data is private. We'll be probably suggesting group names in Google search, so you can search the settle up groups in the Google search in the phone. Okay, so that's how we are going to use Firebase. And next, about architecture we chose, because we are building this up from scratch. So we have been looking what's like cool on the market among Android developers, and we chose this. So first, Kotlin. I will not go much into detail into Kotlin. There was a great talk about Kotlin with Tomáš. Just why we chose it. So it's a modern new language. It's really concise. When I write some stuff from Java to Kotlin, it's usually like half of the code. It's functional. You can use all these lambdas and functional nice stuff. And what's most important, it's really fully compatible with Java and like all the libraries. Like there is like it's designed that way that like it's really fully compatible. So we can keep using existing stuff. It's made by JetBrains, so it has full Android Studio integration. That's really great. So all the refactoring and like link checks work. Some disadvantages. So it doesn't support instant run yet. They are working on it. So the builds are a little bit slower, but it's not that bad. And it doesn't have support for check and jail, which is new build toolchain by Google. But they are also working on it, and they announced it will be released in like a couple of weeks or so. But it's no major blockers. Like it still works pretty well. So that's Kotlin. Then we chose like the architecture for the whole code, MVP, which means Model View Presenter. So what it gives us, it's really nice separation of activities and fragments from like UI logic. So that's important. It used to be that way that you have one huge activity or fragment with all the logic and view stuff together, and it's untestable, it's source of bugs. Now we have it nicely separated to the presenters. We can test these presenters, so because they don't depend on Android, so it's easily tested with like JUnit. Some disadvantages, like you have to create one extra class, the presenter, for each activity or fragment, and also usually two interfaces. So it's nicely wrapped using interfaces. So there's a disadvantage, but it's not that bad. We are also using RxJava or RxKotlin, which is based on RxJava. So RxJava is great for asynchronous operations, asynchronous working with stuff, and Firebase is really asynchronous. Like all the API you're using in Firebase are asynchronous. So it's really great that it orchestrates all these asynchronous calls together. It's also great for handling threads. You can say like this is going to this thread, this is going to main thread, and it's nicer than usual on Android. The disadvantage is quite a steep learning curve. It introduced some concepts which are not really familiar to new Android developers. But like at our company, we like to learn, and it's fine. So that's our architecture. And now, for the rest of my talk, I would like to share with you some practical tips, what we learned by implementing Firebase and this architecture together. So first, just a little bit about Kotlin. I really like Kotlin. I just want to show you 4 quick wins with Kotlin, which is really nice. So first, you don't have to do find view by ID. Every Android library tries to solve this problem, apparently. So Kotlin also solves this, that you just do this import. This is like name of the layout file. And then you just have these members with like, this is the fab. So you can directly access this fab. You don't have to do anything else. You just do this import. On this view, you can set on quick listener. Then you can use this lambda. So in Java, this will be like 600 lines of code. Now it's 3. And like nullity operator is amazing. No more null pointer exceptions. So if this method get presenter returns null, this doesn't execute. So no null pointer exception. There is a library called Anko, which is like Android-specific things for Kotlin. And one of the features is you can do async work. Like you can do async tasks just like this. Just put lambda here asynchronously. That's it. And the final cool thing is extension functions. So you can add new methods to existing Java types or Android types. So I extend long, like normal long type, and I add method format date. Because Firebase gives me the dates in like long, it's like number of milliseconds. So I just call on it just dot format date, and it formats the date for the screen. So that's really nice. Okay, now let's move to MVP. So one thing we've been dealing with in MVP, how does the presenter survive the orientation changes? Orientation change is like a hot topic amongst Android developers, and there is various ways how to solve it. And we solved it with loaders. So I want to show, like why we are doing this is that because if you rotate the change, we want the data the same. We just want the UI to reload, but all the data should be there, and also it should work with various edge cases, like it just finished loading when you are switching in off and stuff like that. Then this solves this problem. So here is some code how we integrate this. So we have base fragment. Here you can see how it's connected with the lifecycle. So on fragment, you need to connect on resume, on pause. And here's how you create the loader. It's really simple synchronous loader. The loader looks like this. So it's really simple synchronous loader. It keeps the presenter reference to the presenter here. If it already has the presenter, it delivers it. So after rotation, it just calls deliver result. If it's not loaded, it will load it like this. And on reset is called when the fragment or activity goes away. So then we call this method to like unsubscribe to Firebase, stuff like that, and then null it. So another tip, it's about RxJava. So Firebase API doesn't have Rx extensions, so you cannot directly use RxJava with it. But it's quite easy to just write like one class which wraps the callbacks from Firebase into Rx. So it can look like this. So you have this method observe object like in Firebase. Here is Firebase query. And it calls on error when there is error or on next with a data snapshot from Firebase. So it just mirrors the Firebase callbacks. It gives you observable. You can then nicely work with it in RxJava. Yeah, by the way, this read more links. You cannot click them right now, but at the end I will give you URL to this whole presentations, and you can click to them later. It's usually some code samples with the full implementation or some articles which we took from as inspiration. So now to some tips about the real-time database. We have been playing with the real-time database a lot, testing it. Like we put a lot of items in it. We are testing if it works well in offline stuff like that. So let's go into that. So first thing people usually ask is pricing. What's the pricing about Firebase, and how does it actually affect the monetization of our app? Because it does affect it. So first, let's see the screenshot from their website. So a lot of services are actually totally free, like analytics, app indexing, authentication, dynamic links, all this cross reporting is all free. That's really nice. But some services are paid. So for example, the real-time database and file storage are paid. There's a free plan, which is quite generous. The biggest limitation for a free plan is the simultaneous connections, 100 users. So it's okay for when you are developing the app or even like alpha or beta testing, 100 simultaneous users is quite a lot. But when your startup grows, you probably have to think about these two plans. One is 25 per month, it's like fixed, and this is pay-as-you-go where you pay for the items. So first I want to talk about this unlimited with the asterisk, because it's not really unlimited. I was talking with some Google guys, and like they told me the limit is actually 10,000 simultaneous connections, but if you exceed it, you can write the Firebase team, and they can work with you to increase it gradually, but you have to talk with them first. But they told me they also work with really big apps, and they do some tricks, like they have multiple instances of Firebase servers, synchronizing between themselves, stuff like that. So like they can do that. It's just there is this hidden limit there. Then the item I'm most concerned about is this 2.5 gigabytes. This is like total storage of data in Firebase real-time database. So it's not monthly, it's like total. Which is still quite a lot, because like it's just text-based data in Firebase database. It's not images. Like you put images into this file storage, which has quite generous limits. But here, like on our current backend, we have like 10 gigabytes of text-based data. So we were thinking, what about it? We don't want to pay $50 per month. But we found out that actually most of the data on our existing backend is like not actively used. It's some like old groups which people started years ago, and like they will never use it. Like they still want to have access to it, but they don't want the real-time access. So what we'll be doing, like archiving of groups. So you can archive groups. So we will make this group, export this group into big JSON, and we'll put this JSON to file storage when it's cheaper. And when a user wants to use it, it will go back to real-time database. And we will also tie the monetization with it. So when you are using Firebase real-time database, the model, monetization model where users pay for the app upfront doesn't really make much sense, or it's risky. Because like the price constantly grows, because your data always grows. So the price grows, but if you don't have enough new users, your revenue can decrease, and that could be a problem. So for real-time database, it's I think important to monetize existing users who are using it. So for example, subscriptions. We actually designed this like hybrid model, because not everybody is willing to pay for subscriptions. So we will actually charge users by like number of expenses they put into the app. So there will be some free limit, and then also they can increase the limit by in-app purchase, or they can pay subscription to make the limit really high, or they can watch an ad and increase the limit a little bit. So we'll be monetizing all these different types of users, but we'll be monetizing existing users. And then it's directly tied with this pricing, because if our usage goes up, then also our revenue goes up. So yeah, that's about pricing. Put the questions over there. Usually it's about pricing. So the big questions when you design a new Firebase app is how to structure data. It's the most important thing you have to think about structuring your data, because it's quite tricky. It's quite tricky to completely change it after it's in production. So here is a snippet of our structure. So we have like expenses, groups, permissions to the groups, and then users. So I want to explain some concepts. So you should really think how you will query the data. That's the most important part. So for example, the expenses are always in some group. Like you are not interested in like all expenses from all users. You are interested just with expenses from one group or multiple groups. So you structure data this way, and then it's really easily to query. You just call expenses slash group IDs slash, and then you can list the expenses in one group. And Firebase also supports limited querying, but it would be really costly to get all expenses first and then filter just those from one group. It will be very costly. So this is much better way. Also here, you should like denormalize your data. Maybe somebody could think, hey, let's put all the expenses in here, like into the group. But it's not good, because then when you want list of groups and maybe you just want the group names, just the India trip, and like user should select which group they should join, the Firebase will also download all expenses, and like you don't need that in that moment. You just want data for what user chose. So that's why it's not linked together but separately. And one more thing, sometimes when you have M2N relationships in your database, you have to duplicate the data. There is just no other way. So that's what we are doing here, because we want both queries. We need like for particular group, what users are in there, like what permissions they have into one group. And we also need the other query. We have one user and show me his groups here. So this information is already here, but it would be very costly to query it from here. So we duplicate the data, and then we need to update it on the both sides. Okay, and another thing about the structure is arrays. So in JSON, array is really like normal things, but in Firebase they like highly discourage you from using arrays, and this is part of our structure. So the problem with arrays is that it really works badly if multiple people are trying to edit the same array, because maybe somebody removed the first and somebody added in something on the bottom, and then the indexes don't match anymore, and you cannot solve this automatically. So it's really discouraged to use arrays for like the list of expenses here. So like this shouldn't be array. How you should solve this in Firebase is using Firebase push. So you can push new items like into kind of list. Like in JSON, it's not list. It has this IDs, like this expense ID. But the Firebase generates unique IDs, so you cannot have a clash when two users do it simultaneously. It's very nicely sorted in the way that people input it into the app. But sometimes the arrays can really simplify things, like what we did here. Like one expense can have multiple items. Also, it can be paid for multiple people and paid by multiple people, this array. And it simplifies the code a lot if you have arrays. But it's okay in this use case, but when we are updating the payment on the client, we always have to think that this is arrays, and we have to update the whole object at once. We cannot update, we cannot add just one item here, or we cannot change just a tiny bit. But it's okay, like for our use case, it's okay. We'll be always updating the whole object. Okay. So let's talk about offline, because I think that's one of the best features of Firebase. So it just works offline. And with one line of code, which is amazing. You just put this one line of code, and all the callbacks, sometimes you get them from the disk, sometimes from the network, and like you don't have to care about it. It's really cool, and it also works in like spotty connections, so not just offline, but like partly offline. Like on this conference, the internet is hard, so like this is the example. And how does it work? So it caches everything that has a subscribed callback to it, up to 10 megabytes. So it's like a cache on the disk, so it also survives killing the app. So it's on the disk, but the limit is 10 gigabytes. Maybe you want more than that. So then you can use this keep sync method, and you can put multiple Firebase paths in sync. And then it can go over this 10 megabytes. And it will be always in sync, regardless if the user is actively looking at some data which is reference. So yeah, as I said, it's also put for bad connection. And if you want to know if the client is connected to the Firebase servers, it's good to maybe show the user that you are offline. You should connect to synchronize stuff. So there is this hidden field in Firebase you can query for, info/connected, and it tells you true or false if you are connected. It's quite useful. So another quick tip, how to detect that list loaded. Because in Firebase, you have a list of items, and you get callbacks that something has been added to the list, edit. And you also get these callbacks in the beginning, like when you are first loading it. So like you get like 10 things that something has been added to the list, but you never know if this is the last one. And typically in the UI, what you want to do is showing some progress bar before this happens. You want to show progress bar, load everything, then hide the progress bar, show the content. And the normal callbacks doesn't give you information if something has loaded. So here's a tip how you can do that. You can use listener for single value event for that. So here is how we wrap it in Eric's Java. So we just call it on next, and then you can hide the progress bar, show the content. So another thing we've been dealing with is descending sorting. So as I said, the Firebase has limited support for querying. What this means, you can basically sort stuff and then limit like first 10 or last 10 items or last n items. So that's about like all the querying there is. But it doesn't support descending, like it's always ascending. And what we wanted is we have this list of expenses, and we want the newest on the top and not on the bottom, right? So here is some ways how you can order by. You can order by child in the Firebase, order by key. This is, by the way, the default ordering if you don't specify it. And it gives you ordering like based on time when it was added. So that's quite useful, but we want it the other way. You can also order by value or by priority. It's similar. So first we thought that okay, this gives us the correct order, but we want the other way. And there is this thing called server timestamp. You can write server timestamp into Firebase and then order according to it. So we said, okay, let's put minus in front of server timestamp, so it will be like reverse server timestamp, and then you can order according to this timestamp, like minus server timestamp. You can use this server time offset. So it's which is like hidden field in Firebase. It gives you offset from your local time and Firebase servers. So you can basically calculate this server time on your client, and then you can just put minus in front of it, and you have this negative server timestamp. But it's kind of hacky, and I also talked with some people in the Firebase team, and they said it would be more performant if we just query the data this way and then like flip it on client. So that's what we are using now. It's not actually that hard to just like you have the Java objects, flip them. That's it. Okay. So how to handle dependencies in a list? So what I mean by dependency, so this is a screenshot from our current prototype where we are playing with Firebase, building the app. So this is like list of expenses, and this is the expense, but you also have the members here, like Philip, Michal, Daria. And in the expense object, we have just IDs of these members. We don't have the names. And so how to do it nicely that the names show up and they also change when the members change. So there is a really nice Firebase URL library, which gives you a lot of stuff. For example, like putting stuff into recycler view on Android from Firebase. It's really easy using this URL library. It also works with animation when something has been added, removed. It's really nice. But unfortunately, it doesn't support these dependencies. So we couldn't use this URL library. We had to write our adapter and the recycler view ourselves. And we talked with some Googlers, like how to solve this, and they suggested, well, maybe in some cases it's okay to duplicate the data, like put the names of the users into each expense. But it's only good for cases when you actually don't care that if the names change, then they will not change in the list. Maybe for some use cases it's okay. I know, for example, if you have a chat and the messages are there just for the short time, so you don't really care that some of the old messages have old name of people, maybe. But we didn't like that. So we did something like this. So we are caching the dependencies for example, a list of members for this group, we are caching in the memory. We are subscribing to changes in these dependencies, and when anything changes in the dependencies, like member name changes, we invalidate the whole list and it's loaded again. So that's how we are solving that. It wasn't really easy to do. We are thinking about making this some open source library, because we spent quite a lot of time to like do this right. Okay, and our final tip, so what about Windows clients? Because we also want to support Windows Universal App, which works on desktop and phones. And as you know, Firebase works on Android, iOS, and web. It doesn't have like native libraries for .NET. So we wrote them. So Firebase has nice REST API, so this is basically just the wrapper around the REST API in .NET. Our Windows developer is really great. So we would like, if you are developing with .NET, check those out and give us feedback. Okay, and that's it. And now here's the link with the slides. So then you can get all these other links. And we can go to questions. So, first question. Do you have any experience with instant apps? So, instant app is a new thing announced on Firebase, on Google I/O, sorry, which is that it's something between website and app. So, when you click to some link, it will be really integrated with the dynamic links, they told me. So it will just download just this tiny part of the app and show you some content in the native part, but like the user doesn't have to install the whole app, just a little part of it. That's the idea. And I sign up for some early access program, but I'm not there yet, so no experience yet. But it's pretty cool, I think. So I think 3 coolest things announced on I/O was instant apps, Firebase, and Android on Chromebooks. That's pretty big, I think. So another question, can Kotlin be added to existing Java-based project without refactoring whole project? Yeah, definitely. You can for example, create just one activity which will be in Kotlin, and the rest of the project will be in Java, or like one screen, one part, or like maybe just database will be in Kotlin. It's fully compatible. You can call Java from Kotlin and also Kotlin from Java, because Kotlin just generates some Java classes you can call. So you can really do that. But it's really great when you can start from scratch and everything is in Kotlin. Then it's really like synergic effect. So next question, how much do you spend per month for Firebase, or do you use free plan? Right now we are using the free plan because we haven't launched the new version with Firebase yet. We have still the backend on App Engine. But we estimate we will fit into this $25 per month plan based on our calculations. Michal Kuchera asks, why did you choose MVP and not MVVM with data binding? So I was playing with data binding before, and it felt to me like too much magic was going on there. I like more things more under control. Maybe I will have to write more code, but I'll be more in control. And I also did some research online, like what other people are using, and more people used MVP than MVVM, so that's why I chose it. So another question, what's the pricing of Test Lab? Bara asks. So I'm not really sure, sorry, check the website. I think it's like you just pay for the minutes of your tests running. So not when the test is starting up or the device is starting up, like it takes just like 5 minutes. Because before every test, it wipes the device completely. You have always fresh device. So you are not charged for that. You are only charged for minutes of your tests. But I'm not sure exact numbers. Another question, is the dynamic link passed also on iOS from App Store? Yeah, definitely. This is cross-platform. It works on iOS, Android. I think on iOS, like they introduced something in like iOS 9, which makes it easier. But also it works on other, like older iOS platforms where you can specify not HTTP URL, but like some like your app specific URL, like settle up URL, and then it will open in our app. So it works. Another question, how was the migration of all data to Firebase? Yeah, we haven't done that yet. Yeah, this will be a challenge, definitely. Because in our case, we have to involve the users. We won't migrate only like the active data, which people are really using, and like not old groups, which nobody will really use. So we need to create some like onboarding flow where we'll explain and user has to click, I want this to be migrated. So, yeah. Another question, how Firebase database solves data conflicts when persistence is enabled? Miroslav Novosvetsky asks. Well, the same way as it handles conflicts when it's not enabled, it remembers all the actions on the client, so you can also like add new expenses on the client offline, and then when it's online, it will just synchronize. And I think like the last wins, like when there is conflict of two exactly the same things edited at the same time, the last wins. So another question, is there a way to put some logic into Firebase? For example, send push notification when something changes in the database. So that's a really good question. We have been dealing with that. actually, like right now, the best thing you can do is that like you fire up your own server in Node.js. They have really nice Node.js API for real-time database. So the server listens to changes in real-time database, and then you can use this npm module for sending GCM notifications. So that's what we are doing. But I think Google is investing heavily into this, and it will be simpler in the future. So Vladislav Ilyushin asks, can you extend Java primitives or override operations of Java primitives in Kotlin? I mean, that's, I think, a question for you, our Kotlin speaker.
Vladia isn't here.
He's just trolling us.
Well, you can't override Java primitives since they are not classes, only primitives. But you can add extension functions to primitives. So that's how you would extend functionality. Yeah.
Cool. So we have last two questions. Can you expand on how you handle orientation changes? So I was talking that we are keeping the presenter still like in the memory when the orientation change happens. So the presenter doesn't change. So all the data is loaded, and there is like callbacks from base fragment on resume and on pause, like which goes to presenter, attach view, and detach view. And on this attach view and detach view, we bind the data with the view. So like we set the adapters for the recycler view. We could also use data binding for that. We are not using it currently. Maybe we will. But then orientation change is no a problem because the presenter always survives. That's important. And it also works nicely when the fragment or activity goes away. Then everything also unsubscribes, and like you don't have memory leaks. More questions? Do you think you will overgrow Firebase in the long run, and you have to migrate to our own storage? So maybe yes, but when we are as big as Dropbox, or like this large company. But yeah, I don't think this will happen. So I think we are betting for this in the long run. So, new top questions. So last question probably. Then we can also take something from the audience. If last request for Firebase wins and you delete parent and somebody adds a child to it, what will happen? The parent will be undeleted? Ooh, that's quite complicated. So, well, yeah, the parent will be undeleted, but like only the path to it. So, like there will be just like group ID, or like the path will be there and then the new child, but not the objects which were before it because they were deleted. So just the path, not the data. Just the final data will be there. Okay, so that's all questions. Maybe you have more questions here on the mic.
So raise your hand. I will hand you a mic if you have some question. So I think, oh, over there. Thanks. I would like to ask about the MVP model. Where do you keep the presenters? You said that they're kept in memory when user rotates the display, but how do you keep them? In some, I don't know, hash map or something where you just query them by the ID, or
How is it?
Yeah, let me find it. Well, basically, it's in the loader. So it's kept the reference to a presenter is in the loader, and loader survives orientation change. That's where we keep it. You can find the code. Yeah. Yeah. Here. So like this is the reference to the presenter. It can be now, but usually it's not. It's in the loader. And loader is kept in the fragment. So yeah. I urge you to go to this link, read more, and like there is the whole article about it. It quite nicely explains it. Like this example here is simplified. They also cover stuff for activities. This is just for fragments. So download my presentation and read this.
Okay, somebody else with a question? So, we're here.
I have a follow-up for that question. What's the difference between using this loader concept versus dependency injection for storing the presenter?
Well, yeah, you can do that. You can store stuff like in a singleton using dependency injection, and then you can access it. What's nice about loader is that really works well with the Android lifecycle. Like the dependency injection doesn't know anything about Android lifecycle, so you have to handle that. But loader really like survives rotation or other configuration change, but also is deleted when the activity or fragment goes away. So you need both. You have to survive, but also you have to clean up when like fragment or activity goes away. That's the. Yeah.
Good. Any other question? Okay.
Did you have some experience with A/B testing with Firebase?
Yeah, not yet because we haven't launched this new app yet. But we definitely plan. I've played with the console. It's quite easy. Like the remote config works like this. You just put like key value pairs. So for example, like color of UI, red or blue, and then you can put percentages. Like 40% of users will have this value, 60% will have this value, and you have the Firebase analytics. And in analytics, you can filter by these variables, so you can see the results in analytics.
Do you have to prepare some code in the app?
Yes, like you have to put the default values of those items into the app, because when the app is downloaded and maybe it doesn't have any connection, it shows the default values. So you have to prepare this upfront.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
One more question. The A/B tests, are they independent? The 40% in one group and 60% in another group?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Let's say you have 100 users and 40% are in one test, A/B test, and you want 60 random users in the second test. So two tests don't affect directly each other.
Yes, it's independent.
Yep.
Good. Somebody else? So I guess we are done. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you.